Damon? Okay, just got Damon beginning to record. Okay, so I say welcome to the session. Tonight's objectives are looking at some of the most recent evidence on how to support children develop early reading and writing. And again, just give you a chance to sit back and review, thinking about the good practice you do, thinking about what could you tweak, what could you add. So this will be all available to you. And with all the sessions, we'd like you to sort of think about the positive aspects of your practice and just give you a chance to sort of think about, yeah, what you do well, what you could tweak, and where we could perhaps improve or perhaps just change slightly what you're doing. Okay, now as with all our webinars, they're going to be based around the EEF guidance report. The one that this really clearly focuses on, the Preparing for Literacy. In the previous webinar, some of you may have attended, we looked at strand 1. You can see there are 7 strands, and we will have a little quick overview of strand 1 in this webinar for those of you who weren't able to see last week. And then we'll have a look at 2 and 3, which is looking how we develop children's early reading using a balanced approach. And then 3, looking at developing children's capability and motivation to write. And we'll just have a little quick glance at strand 5. How could you perhaps support your parents on supporting early reading and early writing? So to give you some ideas. So if you want a hard copy of the guidance report, just let us know. You can read them online, or as I say, use the slides just to give you that quick overview. Okay, so strand 1, which we went through in detail on our previous webinar, was thinking about the prioritization of communication and language. So if children can't communicate, they're really not going to be able to develop those fundamental milestones for reading and writing. So the first key stage that we all need to do is providing the foundation for thinking and learning using language. And then again, that thinking about those high quality adult-led interactions, which are important. And it's that key thing, talking with children, not talking at children. And it's again thinking about how adults play that vital role in modeling effective language and communication. So those 3 things that are building up how we teach our children and support our children develop communication. And that's the beginning part of how we develop reading and writing. And then the approaches that we can do that with is through shared reading, storytelling, and explicitly extending vocab. So those are the effective approaches that you should be using, and you will be hearing and seeing within setting, and how you can help support children with the initial stages of communication, and then how that will lead to effective reading and effective writing, or the beginning journey of being an effective reader and an effective writer. So this is a quote from the EIF, and the Early Intervention Foundation is a different organization to the EEF, but they produce a lot of free resources all around early years, all around and with research based. A lot of it is American, but a lot of the stuff is really useful. And I thought this quote, which I did share last time, but it's giving you a chance to reflect about how important your practice is. So if adults talk with children effectively, taking the lead from the child, so that's listening to what the child's saying, elaborating on what they say, asking questions of the child, sharing rhymes or songs or books, then children are given the best start to developing those cognitive tools they need to succeed in school. So it's thinking about how you interact, and we talked about how it's that serve and return, teaching children that adults will listen, adults will be able to ask them questions, and what they say is important. So it's their understanding the necessity of having effective communication, how you develop for children, how to build their communication skills. And when those communication skills and their ability to interact is in place, then they can start that learning journey and start building and start reading, and then building and reading and writing. Because the thing is, if you don't have the language, reading words, they won't understand what they say. They won't want to write because they don't understand what the effective way, effective mode of communication is. Now, when we talk about communication, we looked at this key skills list. So for communication, you think about it's reading, and that's not just reading words. Communication is reading of faces, thinking about what understand written text, understanding spoken language, having knowledge of color, having confidence to talk. You may have some children who are selective or elective mutes within your practice, or children who are extremely shy, so they haven't got the confidence to communicate or will communicate in their own way. They have to have effective memory, the ability to turn take, the ability to make eye contact. So if we're looking at each other's eyes, we've got the ability to read our facial expressions, having that ability to listen, having the ability to hear. And then again, those key things, having the ability to talk, using words, using sentences, pausing and having clear speech. You remember you may have children who have got some difficulties with formation of language because of their having had too many dummies, or they've got a malformation of their palate or whatever. So having that ability to have clear speech can often be a real barrier. And then also having the social skills and when to react. Everybody, except someone mute, please. Okay, thank you. So our social skills, how and when to react. And those, those children who know when, if you're reading a story, to sit and listen, whereas there's other children who don't understand, who don't read the room, who want to stand up and do join in with the story. So and if you teach a larger group, those children who have got those social skills and know how to take their turn, how to wait, etc. So those are the key skills for communication that we have to have in place. And as I say, those are the building blocks for our early reading and early writing. But when we think about communication as well, there are three aspects, but they're all intermingled. It's all interactive. So the key skills, we've got communication, we've got speech, and we've got language, but they're multifaceted and multi-layered, and we need them all in place for effective communication. So thinking about those three things on this slide, it gives you, you may have been familiar with this, but this was developed by the East London Research School, and it's called the Shrek approach. Now, I've on the right-hand side in the blue, I've put in a blog that if you want to read through it and find a little bit more information, there's quite a lot of stuff out there, but it's a really useful way. And I know a lot of settings have implemented and put it in place to help promote communication. I think it's quite a simple model, but it's extremely effective. And the Shrek stands for share attention, respond, expand, and conversation. So it's just a quick thing to do when you're interacting. Going back to the first slide of the effective communication, how can you promote that? So share attention with the child, respond to the child, expand what the child's saying, and having have conversation with the child. But Shrek is a well-researched and it's well developed in a lot of settings. And where I've seen it used, it has really impacted positively and supported those practitioners who may not be as confident in their interaction. So it's a good, quick model for you to say. As I say, you will have these slides. So if you're interested to have a look at the blog that's written there, but there's lots of other information on the EEF website about it. But going back to your three aspects that are interrelated. So you can see here, speech, language, and communication. What are the different aspects of? So you can see in the first one, speech sounds, having clear speech, having fluency of speech, the tone of voice, differing tones of voice, helping children recognize whenever someone's happy, whenever someone's sad, whenever someone's worried, different stress on words, your different intonation, using pitch and using volume. So those are the main aspects of speech. But then thinking about language, vocabulary, thinking in organized sentences, having the use of grammar, narrative structure, understanding meanings, having verbal reasoning, having inference. I can see this, therefore I understand this, and the understanding of grammar. And then the communication, how we adapt communication to suit the situation audience, how we can listen, take conversational turns, understanding non-verbal communication, that ability to read faces, that ability to see your body language. I think it's something like 70% of communication is all about your stance and your body language, helping children to read that. And then the use of language to persuade, negotiate, predict, and account for consequences. And this is using language to enable conflict resolution, collaboration. You do a lot of that within setting, especially if children are having a conflab about a bike or wanting to use the same resource and having conversations. And if you look at these three strands, you can see how well they feed into the demands of reading and writing. Having that clear fluency, having that stress on words when you're reading a story, understanding what a sentence is, understanding different types of communication. So those three aspects all intermingle to sort of have that effective communication. But you can see having those in place will really support effective reading and writing. And this may be familiar to some of you, but understanding how we need to, how children learn. So you can see here, children learn, we need vocabulary to understand what is in the storybooks and to try and write our own stories. But children on average learn 7 to 8 new words a day. So it's a lot, and usually people underestimate the amount of words that our children are like rapid little sponges. They're really absorbing all the things around them. But again, with our disadvantaged children, the child who enters a school in the lowest 20% of vocabulary knowledge will need to learn 20 new words extra every day for the next 3 years to catch up. So those children who are coming in with a limited vocabulary, you can see how this really impacts their ability to read and write further on their school journey. And here, this was a surprising statistic when I found it, that children need to hear and use new vocabulary at least 50 times in context that is meaningful to them in order to be able to say it. So you may think as an adult, oh, I'm repeating this and repeating this, but some children really require that repetition to help them understand and make sure that they've firmly understood what that word is and how to use it in context. And one way we can look at this is from the EEF guidance report, how we can teach vocabulary. There's different tier words. There are lots of different ways of approaching it, but in this diagram, you can see tier 1, the words of everyday speech, familiar to most children. You know, the things we need: get our coats, let's go to the toilet, it's dinner time, all those different sort of aspects that we need just to get by in the classroom or the setting, the words that we need to use every day on a regular basis. Then those are high frequency words found in many different content areas. So thinking about things like a bank, you know, what is a bank? Can you see a bank is something you roll down? Is it somewhere you go and get your money on, or, you know, money from kind of thing? So those are the tier 2 ones. And then the tier 3, low frequency words, domain specific. And I always sort of think of scientific terms there, chlorophyll, you know, all those different things that you only come across when you're doing a specific topic. But what some settings have done is they've looked at the vocabulary they've used and identified what we're focusing on tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, especially if they're doing a focus essay in space. What could they organise them, and then make sure all staff are aware of the different types, the different vocabulary focusing on for that period or that topic. So each child gets a chance to have that 50 times of hearing that word in context, and so will be more able to use it in their context and use it in their reading or their writing. Another one, this comes from Word Aware. They use slightly different terminology, but you can see the similar idea. You've got your anchor words, which are everyday spoken language, children that understand. You've got the Goldilocks words, the really useful words, likely to be encountered again. Yeah, topic specific, but you may come across them in different ways. And then your step-on words, as I say, those words I always lean back on science, where words that are less likely to be encountered again. So again, Word Aware is a resource that looks at stories. It identifies and gives you the story, and it puts a word bank for anchor words, Goldilocks words, and step-on words. But I say it's just another approach or a different way of organizing your vocabulary. And then again, you may be familiar with STAR. Another way to develop, which you select the word, you teach the word, you activate, and you review. So I say that I've seen this work within settings as well, all equally as good, but I say it's thinking about what works well, within your setting, what works well within your practitioners or the children you work with. So it's thinking about, but the key message is to help communication skills and build vocabulary, which in turn is a real good mile building block for reading and writing. You need to have perhaps some organizational approach to how you organize your vocabulary rather than just having it sort of more random. Say, if you've got a story bank or have a regular story that you tell or a regular topic, pre-identify the vocab, and then supporting those children who may have less opportunity or less experience of stories and reading and engagement when they come into your setting. So the teaching star, choose a combination. They suggest using sensory experiences, activate them. So you can see you have things like word on the wall, have treasure hunts for words, have sorting activities, have word walks, and then to review. You can see some of the word bank activities, bringing about, teach a new word to Teddy. There's lots of different ideas out there, but I think the key thing is having that organizational approach to vocabulary. But whatever way you do it, the thing is, grab the opportunity, make sure it's quality input. Everyone needs to know what the focus is. Use whatever your identified words in lots of different ways, but connect them and make them meaningful for the child. And then wider conversations not related to the immediate situation. So if you're having a conversation around an activity, let's say you're in the sand tray, you're digging a hole with a digger, or you're digging a hole with a spade, you could say to oh, I can see you're digging a hole. Have you been to the beach? All those sorts of things. Try and make the child understand the language can be transferred from one situation to another situation. So language is extendable and expandable, but also useful in different contexts. So one of the first things in part 2 of the Preparing for Literacy is thinking about how we also use a book. So this one says guided interaction. Now, guided interaction around a book, some of you may know that as book talk. Some of you may know that as dialogic reading, but the EEF used the terminology guided interaction. But it just means when you are sitting with a child reading a book, thinking about the child you're working with and how you can talk through the story and how you can discuss the story, how you can look at the illustrations, how you can ask questions of the child. So when you think, if you've got a young child who's highly interested in certain areas, what questions could you ask them? Are they noticing the illustrations? So it's giving that discussion around the story, not just reading the story, but helping the child, modeling questions for the child. What do you think this is happening here, kind of thing? But this will help extend the child's thinking and child's understanding all around a book. So that's the terminology guided interaction. On the evidence store, there are some clips which are showing practitioners using the guided interaction with children. I thought they're really useful. That may be something you may want to go and look at the website and see sort of some of the short clips there to show you what good practice looks like, or just to reaffirm this is what we already do. But again, some of you may be familiar with this. Thinking about those children that may not be communicating as well. Often when we think about communication, the first thing we think about is speech. But from this communication pyramid, you can see at the base, the main thing is start with where the child is confident. So, but the base thing is the ability to interact. The ability to interact, to understand that an adult or a children will talk with each other, their ability to interact, have those social skills, and then build on that. Are they able to attend and listen? Then you can see, are they understanding? Can they understand what you're saying to them, what you're reading to them? And then how can they express it? And then the top, you can see the speech. So the communication period is useful if, as I say, you've got a child that you're worried about their interaction, that you're worried about their communication, but this is used also by speech and language therapists. Start where the child needs to work from. So I say, if they're available to interact, maybe you need to work on attention and listening. But it's useful to keep that in your mind's eye whenever you are thinking about those children that are not perhaps hitting those developmental milestones within setting that you would expect. So strand 2, the main aspects of these are the top lines. So early reading requires a broad range of capabilities. And you've seen from when that quick through the strand 1, you can see all those different skills children need to have in place. But they've also found that a range of approaches is more effective than focusing in one. So try and have a myriad of different approaches that can be useful for or can be applied to individual children. So instead of just sticking to one way, thinking of 2 or 3 within provision. And then the key things, storytelling, developing letter and sound knowledge, singing and rhyming activities to develop phonological awareness. Now, phonological awareness is the child's ability to hear sound. It's not their phonic ability, but it's their ability to hear what is the makeup of individual words. So their ability to hear. And what they've found from research is that it is the human voice that is the most effective way of developing that within children so that they can hear and they can then develop their phonological awareness. And until a child has developed phonological awareness, they're ready for introducing phonics. And they've also found that some children are being introduced to formalized phonics when they haven't got good phonological awareness. If they haven't got good phonological awareness, they won't be able to hear the different sounds and how words are made up and how to identify syllables within words. And I often found that if a child wasn't able to clap their name, then you knew you needed to do a lot more work to help them be able to. So going back to those storytelling and listening to, talking to, helping them hear, because if they can't hear those different sounds, they won't be able to develop things like onset and rhyme because they can't hear what the different sounds make or how the words are made up. So those are the key top lines from developing children's early reading using the balanced approach. The balanced approaches don't always just have one focus, but have lots of things in your tool bag, your toolkit to help develop. And phonological awareness is key. I have taught children at year 2 who really struggled with phonological awareness. They still couldn't hear by the age of 7 how different words were broken down, and they had to just really learn to read by rote, but they found it extremely difficult, and they found actually they couldn't then help and extend their reading. They struggled and they were find difficulty all the way through their school life. So it's that key thing, but also being aware of if they don't have that phonological awareness, phonics is a meaningless exercise. So be wary if some children are very quickly able to sort of hear sound, usually quite children who you can hear when they're talking to you, have different tones of voice or whatever, they're listening to and hearing different aspects of language. So they're listening to all the vocabulary and sort of absorbing it. But as I say, just to be key, be a warning note about the being too quick to introduce formalized phonics. Now, this is the simple view of reading. I thought I'll put this up just to make you aware of sort of what children have to do. You can see that this quadrant here, the top right, you can see children who have good word recognition and good comprehension. So they can see the word, they can understand. Those are those children who are going to fly with reading. So they're going to find it really easy. So you can see they're your little group that are going to say really absorb and fly with the reading. On the left-hand side, you can see children who've got good word recognition but poor understanding. Children who can decode, can't say the word, but have real difficulty understanding what the text is saying. I always used to sort of say it's like children who would go out and go, this is a minefield, don't cross here, but would continue walking. So they say they know what the word means, but it's that poor comprehension. And again, that finds in difficulty. They're having difficulties with their language comprehension. And on the bottom left, you've got your poor word recognition, your poor comprehension. Those are those children who are really going to struggle very hard. Those are ones who more than likely on the SEN register, but they find it very difficult to decode. They find it very difficult to understand, often because they're spending so much time decoding the word they've forgotten what the beginning of the sentence says because it's such a long process for them. And then you've got on the other side the poor word recognition but the good comprehension. And you know this with children who, although they're not able to read the words themselves, when they listen to a story, they're really able to understand. But the simple view of reading is a good tool if you've got a large group. I used to use it to analyze my class and sort of plot where the children were and sort of see what would I need to put in my provision to meet the need. And if there was a high cluster in one of those quadrants, I would then sort of see what could I adapt, what could I put in place to ensure that those children were developing the skills they need. But it's a useful tool, especially if you work with a large group of children.
Alexa, turn off.
Okay. Now Scarborough's rope is Kate Scarborough. This isn't in the Key Stage 2 reading, but I thought it was just useful for you to sort of see the components of what we need to have. She identified the things that we need to have in place, those strands, to make sure we are effective readers and understand language. And you can see here at the bottom, phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. And you find that that is usually what is heavily focused on children who are in Key Stage 1 or below. However, what she identified is we do also need to have these other strands. We have to have background knowledge, we have to have vocabulary, we have to understand language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. You can see also how many things our children, all that cognition has to be in place to help them and able to engage with reading. I think it's marvelous whenever you hear them and all those skills that they're applying. But as I say, it's a useful tool to think about your provision. What do you have in place? You know, what can you ensure to extend background knowledge, to extend vocabulary? But so when those are all those strands are in place, that's when we have those really effective readers, and if they're effective readers, they're highly likely to be effective writers. But what helps, this is a key thing, reading the same book several times helps with language learning. So if the child wants you to read the same book again and again and again, I've often had parents who sort of say, oh, I'm a little bit worried because he always asks for this story. But I always liken it to, it's like you watching your favorite film again and again. You get something different from it every time. So as I say, it really helps, and the research has shown it really helps support them gaining that ability to get new vocab, because it's the 50 times repeat to get that word in context, to make sure they have a secure understanding of what the word means, and that helps them extend their vocabulary in a secure way. So what text do we need in place? You need to have a whole range of different types of rhyming texts, storybooks, traditional tales, non-fiction. They have a place as well, online text and apps, books with pictures and pictures books, all different types. So children will go for different types of stories. Some children really love fact-based books. Other children like poetry books, story books. But I think the thing is, the message is to ensure that they have an experience of all different types of, and keep, as I say, adapting and changing your stories as well. So, because some children will always tend to favor a certain type of book, but as I say, trying to put in, I mean, I always sort of think about those children who never go through near a non-fiction book unless it was part of their a topic you were doing. So it's trying just to open their eyes to that there are different types of books, and it helps them understand that there are different types of books out there that all have a different place. So using different texts, using different ways, and having those available so that they can have free access to them. But this is another idea that I used with a nursery in Macclesfield. If you've got a young child, you don't have to have a book. What they trialed was they sent a picture home. They're using the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, How I Wonder. So they sent pictures home, put them on the fridge, and the children, they used to give couple of prompt questions for the parents. So the children were understanding they're engaging with a picture. So they're engaging with some sort of visualization, but to ask questions about it. So I thought it was a really, really nice way of helping them engage and say, parents found it, especially those who have got limited skills themselves, found this was a more accessible way to help them support their child with their reading. Then there's another one using the I wonder why, I wonder if, getting children to be curious. Like there's another nice, so choose some individual pictures, put in a simple one again. You can see here there's a myriad of questions here. I wonder why. Why are they looking up? I wonder if, if that mouse climbs on the shoe, that little mouse there, what's going to happen to him? So as I say, it's just different ways of helping children engage with both the illustrations and the text. And the illustrations can be as useful as well because they can help formulate and support the story. And these are lovely Anthony Brown, good readers, children with good comprehension with great backstories. So you can look at that and sort of think, what are they saying to each other? Wait, why is there a gorilla on her lamp? Why has the little girl got the blanket up at her nose? So it's lots of different ways of looking at different aspects of literature, but it's getting that engagement. I think the message is use a myriad of different ways, but just helping children hands-on books, letting them understand books are very important. I say we've had some children come into nursery who don't know how to turn pages but can swipe. So it's getting them away from understand how we hold books, and books aren't always as important within the learning environment. But this is some of the key things from the strand 2. So how can practitioners best improve? So you think about thinking aloud their thoughts as they read to the pupils. When you look at you're reading the story, think about, I wonder why, I wonder if. So again, because practitioners modeling and asking themselves questions that they show how they monitor the comprehension. So it's sort of thinking, oh, I wonder if, what do you think here, children? And again, you making explicit the thinking processes result in drawing in inference. You are talking out loud and modeling what you would think, what your understanding is, or what can you see in the picture. So it's again modeling it so the children will listen. This is what happens when you read a story, and this is how you do it. Oh, this is how you could ask yourself some questions. So it's that explicit modeling for children. And then again, using language, making connection. Oh, that reminds me. No, I was confused when. And then again, modeling their layers of meaning in the text beyond the literal. I can see that, and modeling links between parts of the text. So the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story. Children always find it difficult, I think, understanding the mechanics of how a story is made up. And once they're confident with that will really feed into their writing skills. Because if they don't understand what the beginning of a story is or the end of a story is, they're not going to be able to construct their own writing. So it's modeling and making links. So it's verbally talking out loud how you can see things in the story and asking yourself those questions and getting them, you will be able to model how to ask questions, and they will then understand how you can interrogate the text. So again, this is talking about the phonological awareness. You see at the bottom the phonemes, the smallest parts of the speech. And that's the really key thing. If children can't hear those phonemes, they're going to find formalized phonics really difficult. They're really gonna, and if they don't hear the phonemes, they'll find it difficult with onset and rhyme, listening to that fat, cat, bat type things. Syllables, hearing the beats within a word, and how could they do that? Words, making sure that they're understanding units of meaning, phrases, and there's leading up to the top, those whole grammatically correct utterances. So those are really key to hear with reading, but they're also really key whenever you start your journey of being a writer. So I just thought that'd be useful to put in if you are interested in looking at what the research says with the phonics. As I say, these are live links. If you want to, or you have some children who are ready to do phonics, or you are having children are asking you to spell words if they're wanting to write a word or whatever they're asking. So they're doing some writing in the play area or working in the post office or whatever. These links will help you with your pronunciation and the checking of your understanding. So it's key that you're able to give the correct enunciation for the phonic awareness. I thought it'd be just useful to put in there for you. As I say, it's not something we'll be going into because that would be a whole webinar in itself, but it's just useful if you want to check if you are pronouncing your phonemes, etc., correctly. And again, what the research also says is giving them, if you're doing some sessions with phonics, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and then the apply section. Again, when people think about the phonics skills check, it's helping children understand how to apply it. But say, read this through at your leisure if you're interested in looking at what are the key skills in teaching formalized phonics. So, but now we're going to look at strand 3. So you can see reading underpins writing. In this country, we teach reading first and then do the more formalized aspects of writing. In other European countries, they teach them both at the same time. I think that's just a historical thing, but they do find that if you teach them at the same time, there is less differential between reading skills and writing skills. But say, this is what we have. So thinking about developing children's capability and motivation to write. You can see here, expressive language underpins writing. So you can remember back to the communication pyramid, the children need to be able to express themselves before to underpins their writing skills. They need to understand there's a wide range of opportunities to communicate through writing. And what you try to do in the early years is develop the foundations of fast, accurate, and efficient writing style, and that can be the physicality. And we'll look a lot at how you do the muscular ability within young children, because what you find is if children don't have the physical ability to actually write, by the time they get to year 2 and year 3, they don't have the stamina to produce the extensive bits of writing that are expected, because physically they can't, because they haven't got the developed aspects. They haven't got the strength in their hand to hold a pencil or pen for a sustained amount of time, but also monitor if you observing children, monitoring both the process and the product of handwriting. So it's thinking very much of, I mean, how children are physically able to, and how they write, and how they get mark making on the page. There's lots of different ways we can do this. One of the things you may be familiar with is the helicopter stories. So the children is the author, the children tells a story, the practitioner writes it down. So the children there, although they have the ability to tell the story, they have the expressive language, they're not yet able to write it down in a formalized way, but they're still they're starting that, dipping their toe into that learning journey for being an effective writer. So helicopter stories is really good training out there for it. It's a really interesting day's training that you have the opportunity to get on, but it's a really useful way to interact meaningfully with young children, but to help them develop their storytelling abilities. And here is another simple view of writing. You can see its similarity to the simple view of reading. The top right, the strong composition, effective transcription. So children that can tell a story and can write it down. Those are your high flyers. Those are those ones that are, really effective writers that find that process easy. Then we've got on the opposite side, on the left-hand side, strong composition, poor transcription. They've got really good stories, but they really struggle to get them written down. Those children are bursting with ideas, but they have a physical right of getting it down. They just can't get their ideas down on paper. And then we got on the bottom, we have poor composition and poor transcription. Those children who really find it very difficult, i.e. to tell a story, and they also can't get it down. Again, those are those little groups of children who really will struggle within formalized education, because they don't have stories, they don't have the imagination, they don't have that expressive vocabulary in which to plan, formulate, and they can't get this, whatever story they have, they find it very difficult to get down. Often it's due to poor slow processing. By the time they've found the sounds or the words that they want to have, by the time they've processed it, it's taken them so long they've forgotten the beginning of the sentence. And then we got on your bottom right, poor composition, effective transcription. Those children who are really good at handwriting exercises, but they got limited ideas for stories. You know, those children cover the stories look beautiful, they're elegantly written, but they've got no depth, they've got no imagination. So again, I used to use this as a class plotter to see sort of where I would need to improve or change my provision to try what can I support, where can I put my efforts in. I've had it, as I say, I've had a cluster. If you had a cluster at the top right with your strong composition, effective transcription, you know, you were that was a good day. But as I say, all groups of children usually have a good mix of here. And as I say, it was useful for me as a practitioner to sort of see where I could put my intervention or put my support. But again, it's thinking about what do you do before you put any mark making tool? What are the key things we need to do to help those children who build that physical requirements of writing? And again, it's like reading. There's an awful lot of key skills we need to have in place before we start the formalized things of making marks on paper. So it's thinking about those water play tray things, Play-Doh, all those manipulation type things that they can really help support those key building blocks for helping children physically write, but also, as I say, thinking about how they can make stories and make their writing vibrant or understand what goes into a good story. So there are 3 developmental stages linked to writing. I thought it would just be useful to go through these this evening. So children begin mark making because they're not meaning to convey meaning, but they can make marks. You all know those children who write, make marks, do whatever. Then you've got the other children who are nearly ready for writing. You know, they're setting up a canteen or a cafe and they want to show you the menu or take your order. So as I say, children are at all different stages of development, but most children follow a same sequence. So you need to think about the children you have and setting where they are. So they start with the shoulder pivot, then it's the elbow pivot, and then it's the wrist pivot. So these need to be all developed effectively to ensure the children are able to be, as I say, able to write with for a sustained time, which is expected of them when they get into year 2 or year 3. So the shoulder pivot, you think about children use their upper body muscles. So they make emergent mark making. They have a grasp, palmar sulpinet grasp. So that means they clasp the pencil like in a fist. So they're not ready for the pincer movement, but they hold the pencil in the fist. You can see the child here. The child will have a stiff wrist and a straight elbow and the most movement coming from the shoulder. And marks are usually long, straight or circular. So you know those children who are, when they're out with a chalk or they're out with a paintbrush, movement is coming straight from the shoulder, and the children are normally standing up when they're doing that. They need a lot of space for these. So think about those children. They're made long, straight or circular. So activities to ensure that these are developed: washing the walls with soap and brushes again, a lot of that outside stuff, painting with mops. It's great whenever you see these all in action. Playing swing ball with sponge and tights, so you know they're beating. So they're using those top half of their body. Swing painting with tights and tea bags. So you put a tea bag in a pair of tights and they swing it backwards and forwards, so they're making marks on either a piece of paper or a wall. Painting trees with shaving foam, you know, all those different things. Foam bike tracks, so you know somebody runs in front with a shaving foam, the child needs to move the bike around the different circular bits. So again, they're really improving those shoulder aspects. And digging in sand and soil, all those things that you provide outside, those are the key things to get that shoulder pivot developed and to get them ready for the next stages of development. And so it's lots of outside work, lots of big work, and say work when the children are standing up. Then they move on to the elbow pivot. So whenever the shoulders are ready, they strengthen and there'll be more movement at the elbow. So the shoulder becomes more still and the elbows do the work. Now this is where they're more able to sit at a table to do things, but they start to get more movement in their arms. They begin to use their muscles in their lower arm to swing their arms in and out of the body in a semicircular action. So they're increasing their range of movement. So again, the elbow pivot. So a way to support these, again, pulling their bodies up on ropes or climbing walls, so they're bending that ribbon and scarf twirling. So again, they're trying to make that more finite movement, throwing and catching, using their elbows to push the hand forward. Again, things that you do a lot of, things like sawing wood, making patterns in the sand, pulling plunges from vertical or horizontal surfaces. I saw that in a nursery in London. It was lovely. They had about 20 plungers. Their children were running around, pulling them up, putting them down. It was a really innovative way, but you could see how it was really helping develop those elbows, and the children were having fun at the same time, and I think the staff were as well. But then when they have got those developed, this is when you start seeing the more formalized aspects of writing, the wrist pivot. So again, the children are able to sit at a table. They're able to tuck their arms into the side of the body, and they have more limited movement. But you can see they'll move on from that palmar grip to, you can see here, the dynamic tripod grip. Some children find that a lot easier than others, but as I say, that's what we want to see, that dynamic tripod grip. But they won't be able to do that unless they have had the shoulder and elbow muscles purely developed well. Then they're able to move on to that pivot. So we can have them sitting at a table doing the more formalized aspects. And you can see here, these are the activities. These are very common. They're nothing new to here. You can have threading, sewing, dabbing with a sponge, some fishing games, some splatter painting. There's lots and lots of other different ways out there to help support them. But if you have those in place, those really develop those muscularity, developmental, to help support writing, because we've got a lot of children coming into school who spend a lot of time on devices and they haven't got that stamina to write, or they haven't got muscle development because they spend a lot of time swiping rather than doing those other activities which would help develop that muscular, develop those different three aspects of writing development. Now, this is a website here called Highland Literacy. Now, this is a government-funded website. Everything on it is quality assured and produced by qualified speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, etc. Now, on here, they put, because so many schools in Scotland are widespread, they put a lot of quality information on here. And I thought this is just one example, but you can see here it's called Pre-Writing Developmental Continuum. It's all the resources are free. This is a free PDF. So you can see here they've given on the fine motor skills, you can see there's different ways. You can see where a child is and what could you do to help support the next aspect of. So Honda's fine motor skills, scissor skills, pre-writing skills. They also have sort of other information on stories, etc. There's a whole range of information. So it's a really useful website, and one that I would hardly recommend because everything on it is quality assured. A useful place to go. And if you just Google pre-handwriting skills, Highland literacy, you will get this one as well. But as I say, you'll see that the link on the slides when we get them sent out to you. But in the English language, these are the types of movement that we need to use to write the English language, to write the words that we have within our vocabulary. So you can see at the top, the straight strokes for vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. We need the circular strokes and semicircles. So you can see the different aspects of movement children will need at a wrist pivot time to be able to write the words as part of our vocabulary. But what the researchers said, you can see the figure of 8. If a child is able to do that, they are ready to be able to do the more formalized aspects of writing. So as I say, it's a useful term. If you see children being able to do that within their mark making activities, you know that they are sort of virtually ready for that more formalized aspects of writing. And I said at the beginning, we look at 1, 2, but also the key thing is helping support the parents, helping support your parents to help their children learn. So it's encouraging those parents who may not be as confident readers. If you have children just encourage them to read to children and encouraging reading with children. Often, but when children get a little bit older, parents have said, oh, they can read now, but they don't need me to read with them. But they've sort of said that it needs to be those children who are stronger readers do need to be continued to be read with. And I mean, you may have thought about this, doing workshops, how you can help support showing parents how to read and talk about books effectively, and helping them support children with pre-writing. So it may be something you've already in place, but to say that was part of the EEF research, they said it was key, and also thought it was useful for me to put this in. Now, the billion word gap is a new, well, relatively new bit of research, but they've got lots of posters and things, which I thought it was really useful to sort of flag up to show you that it's aware, and you may want to put a poster up on your door or whatever, so parents really see. You can see why it's important. Children by the age of 5 will have heard by 5 based on how often parents read to them. So if they've never read to 4,662 words, 1 to 2 times a week, 63,570 words, 3 to 5 times a week, 160. Well, you can see the stats here, but you can see those children who read 5 books a day, look how many words they're engaging with. And if you think back to sort of how important and key vocabulary is, that's a real incentive to me as a parent to think, oh, even 1 to 2 times a week, if I read a story with my child, look at the difference it makes. And you can see, remember, maybe you've got that small little 20% at the bottom coming into your setting. They're never read to, they experience that small amount of words, and then you can see how difficult it is for them to sort of catch up within within their journey through education. So I say it's a really useful bit of research. As I say, they have lots more visuals out there that you may want to use within your setting. But I was going to just say as well, flag up for the EEF Evidence Store. They've got their reading strand again on there. The only thing with that is you have to go on live to the website, but under each of the strands, there is interactive reading, which we've looked at. There's writing, and there are little clips that you may want to share with your colleagues. Have a little look at. I said the clips are only 3 to 4 minutes long, but they just show what they mean by what it says in the research. And often people hear research term and think, oh, I don't quite know what that means. But when you see it, think, ah, we do that already. So it's just self-reaffirming to see what they have in place. There's the early years toolkit as well, which has also got information on there, again, linked to effective reading and writing. And there's also the EIF, the Early Intervention Foundation. So I mean, there's lots of different bits there, but I say if anywhere I would direct you towards would be the EEF Evidence Store, if you're interested in looking at, because I say we've only got an hour, but looking at sort of little clips of what the practice looks like and how you can support your colleagues or sort of improve your provision. I'm going to just stop there. As I say, any questions and any thoughts sort of over to you. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but I'm going to just stop sharing here. Okay. Okay. I don't know if anyone had any queries, any questions about what we've discussed, what we covered. Just going to pause recording.